Hello. So I'm coming a couple of minutes early. Let me just because I'm a technophobe, unmute myself. I am unmuted, aren't I, ladies? If you can hear me, please let me know in the chat box. Just type a simple yes. And if you're able to, that is. I will know that. Oh, thanks, Karen. Thanks, Jenny. That's really good. Now, we're not due to start for another couple of minutes. Just wanted to get on to make sure that you can see me, hear me, and that the lighting is okay. I think it seems. If you've got any problems seeing me, also let me know. Maybe I'm seeing something else that's known to happen. Have you got your glass of wine, ladies, or your gin, or in my case, a cup of tea? Oh, thanks, Karen. It's all good. That's brilliant. So we're getting a few more people join us. So I'll just give it another minute or so. Hi, Katie. Hi, Mona. Just give it another minute or so. Let me see, check what time it is. Okay, so I am actually going to start. What I will do is I'm going to record this too, if I can find the record button. If I can find, oh, it's automatically recording. That's taken care of. Brilliant. So I'm expecting some people might join us sort of later on. I've had a few messages from people to say that they can't get on at 7 o'clock, but they can get on a little bit later. So we'll just let them join. And this is a really different style of doing things for me, because I'm used to the normal Zoom call where I can see you all. And so I feel like I'm talking to myself, but I can see you in the participants box down here, and I know you're there. It's 60 minutes. It's the miracle hour. I have known to go off on a tangent, so I've got my watch on, and I'm just going to make sure that I, don't ramble, because I could talk about this all night. But I hope you're comfortable, ladies. So yeah, welcome to the miracle hour. And what is this about? Why am I here? Bringing this work to you, and really, I don't know if you can see behind me, there's a little plaque here. Just over 12 months ago, a client sent me that as a little gift. We were working together, and she had huge transformations, and she sent it to me, and what it says is, the meaning of life is to find your gift, the purpose of life is to give it away. And that really struck me, really hit home, because that's the work I do. The work I do with both men and women is around them finding more meaning in life. And sometimes that means that big outer changes occur, but always it accompanies big inner changes, big inner transformations. The big outer stuff follows the inner stuff. And sometimes it means people just get happy with what they're already doing, even though they originally thought they wanted to change it. And this particular client was an optician who became a coach, and she'd been a coach for about 3 years. And she's now a happy optician again. She's now doing work she really, really loves. And I could really relate to that, because my background is in social work. For a long time, I was a social worker working in the youth offending team. And I was doing really well. I was at the top of my game. I got a really good, thriving career. I was doing well financially. I was happily married. I got 2 gorgeous children. Everything in my world seemed right. But everything in my inner world seemed wrong. And this wasn't apparent always. It would come and go. But over the years, it gradually increased, this feeling of just, what's wrong? What else is there for me to do? And so I'd look for other careers, look for careers to go into. And then one day my husband left. And I thought, oh, that must have been it. I must have been in an unhappy marriage. That must have been what was up with me. And it just seemed that, from there things snowballed, and it really looked like it was as a result of my divorce. I'd been rejected. I was a failure. People around me who thought I'd got a perfect marriage were suddenly seeing that I hadn't after all, even though I hadn't known at the time that I hadn't. And so there started these series of events that continued for around about 8 years. I just hit the deck so many times, attempted suicide, and then would sort of get up back off the floor and recover, go back into work, feeling everything's okay again, and then I would hit the deck again. And I just didn't know what was going on. And I binged on drink and drugs and men and good times and holidays and cars and all of the, shoes, clothes, all of the stuff that you could binge on, I binged on in a massive attempt to feel okay, to just feel human, to just feel like I thought everyone else felt. Because I just didn't know that we were all struggling, that most of us were struggling. I thought it was only me. And then in 2011, after my blowing the whistle at work for an incident, I left and I went to the NHS and I became a PA, which was a really different job than I'd ever done before. And I thought, well, this job's going to be less stressful. I was the worst PA ever. I really discovered I'd got no organisational skills. My hats go off to PAs all over the world. They are marvellous. I just don't possess those skills. And so I was quickly promoted out of that position. And when I was promoted, I was fortunate enough to have a coach. And she was amazing. And I thought, that's similar to social work, but with adults. And, nicer, So I'll do that. And so I trained as a coach. But no one told me that I would need to learn how to run a business. I just didn't, I had no concept that I wouldn't be paid every month. And so this lifestyle that I had sort of grown accustomed to, that was actually, I was in a lot of debt already by then, quickly escalated. And fast forward 18 months, I had no clients whatsoever. I had one, actually. I ninja persuaded a friend of mine to work with me. And she paid me 140 something pound. And, but I was in a lot of debt. I owed £149,000 and I was flat on the floor, really not knowing what to do. And back in this cycle of, I want to die, I'm useless. Life seemed pretty rubbish. But actually, no one really knew at that point that that's how I was feeling. It looked like I had everything. I was in a new relationship. And it really, I'd got all of the outer stuff. I just got none of the inner stuff. And so one day, cutting a long story short, because I don't want to keep you, one day I ended up in London on a course, and it was a 12-month program, and it was looking at thought, mind, and consciousness, what's known as the 3 principles. And my mentor at the time, Jamie Smart, was running this program, and he was talking about the nature of thought and how it's all thought and how we don't even know what exists outside of thought. And I sat there listening and I thought, well, that's because he doesn't know that I owe £149,000 and that in 4 days I'm about to get my house repossessed. In fact, he couldn't possibly know because I'd told no one. No one knew. I hadn't even told my partner, who'd sort of only recently moved in with me. I was getting more and more anxious because I really was hoping I would hear some magic this day, to help me make £149,000, and then my life would be okay. I just wanted to make £149,000, and then I could be okay. Then I could get myself. I'd stop the drugs. I would stop the drinking. I would stop the partying. I would stop the mania, the manic behaviour. I would stop the pretense, and I would finally be okay and have some peace. And so, you know, you can see that for 20 years I've been on this sort of, I've been up at the top of my game, and I was right back down at the bottom of it again. And I thought the answer was climbing back up. And Jamie that day insisted that it's all thought, and that a whole experience is thought, and that nothing can harm us beyond that. And that it really does look that way. It really does look like there's this experience that's harmful. But beyond that is only love, peace, joy, happiness, contentment. And I kind of knew what he was saying. There was a part of me that was listening, but there's a big part of me that wasn't. My intellect wasn't. And I'm asking you ladies to listen to tonight's class from that deepest knowing, and your intellect might kick in. You know, I'd be surprised if it didn't. But it isn't your intellect that I want to speak to. I really, you know, the whole purpose of you being here is that you can have some deep shifts. And for that, you're going to have to relax and trust that you know this. But I wasn't doing that day, you know, and I rang Stephen. I was in London, I'm in Stoke, you know, so I'm about a 3-hour drive away. And I rang Steve, my partner, said, I'm coming home, this is crap, this is bullshit, I need to come home. And he said, oh, you always do this, you've wanted to do this for ages, Nikki, this programme. And now here you are bottling out. And there's a part of me that heard that. And then there was a part of me that said, oh no, fuck you. Like, here, you know, I don't want to know you either. Like, my intellect kicked in, my ego kicked in. And so I put the phone down and I thought I might as well stay. And I'll go home tomorrow. I paid for a hotel. And so I goes to my hotel that night. And I climbs into bed and I was exhausted, as I was nearly every day. I was just so exhausted and just hoped I'd sleep. And you know, that halfway state, that halfway sleep, that, you know, you're neither asleep nor awake. It's kind of a haze. I was there, and the alarm went off. The fire alarm went off, and the first thing that popped into my mind was, wow, this is my answer. This is what I've come to London for. I haven't come to London to listen to that stuff that I'd listened to today. I've come to London to die in this fire. And my kids will get the insurance money, and Stephen will get some insurance money, and they won't know that I stayed here on purpose, that I chose to die here. They won't have that pain, and they'll recover, and I won't be such a big mess in their lives. They'll heal. And so I suddenly felt really peaceful. It looked like I'd got my answer. And as I was lying there in this deep state of peace that I hadn't felt for many, many years, I was suddenly tearing my way down 7 or 8 flights of stairs, making my way to the fire exit. And I got nothing on my mind whatsoever, only I don't even know if I've got get out the hotel on my mind. I was just running for my life, literally running for my life. And as I ran through reception, the little guy from behind the reception, I heard him shout, "Miss, miss," and I turned around. I thought, why isn't he out? I turned around and he was like tearing his jacket off because I sleep naked. And he was trying to wrap it around me, and he said, "Miss, it's a false alarm." And that stopped me in my tracks. I realised that I think I was 44, 45, but I'd been fighting imaginary fires for all of those years. And I still get emotional when I think of this, because I'm so grateful that I saw this. I just burst out laughing, and he was mortified at my nakedness. This crazy woman. But I just felt this immense gratitude for seeing how our experience works and how the illusion of our experience works. There was no fire, but it certainly seemed to me that there was a fire. And I was so willing, it appeared, to die in that. And what I realised later, not that night, but later, was what I was willing to do is die to that woman that I thought I was. That's who died that night, thankfully. And so the next day I did go back to Jamie. I did go back. And I was crying like this all day. I was so relieved. I just knew that nothing would be the same. I knew that if nothing changed in my life, if I still got my house repossessed, if I never managed to pay that debt, that I was still whole and complete. And I just hadn't understood who I really am. And so, ladies, that's what you're here to discover tonight. So thank you for listening to that. I'm going to take questions at the end of this. So I'll try to leave some space, some time for that. I'm going to take questions at the end of this because you may have some of your own. But feel free not to have some questions as well. You don't have to just come up with some. But you can also email me at a later date and, ask some questions then. And as a token of my deep appreciation, because I really do appreciate you giving up your time and coming on here, I have got a free gift for you. Again, we'll talk about that at the end. I want to get straight into now you've heard a little bit about me, I want to get straight into the 3 shifts that can turn your life from mundane to miraculous, that can really enable you to find a deeper space and find meaning and really start to live a fulfilled life. Because from that moment, I just did. I really just shifted. And I've continued to do so over the last 4 or 5 years. I've continued on this journey, and I'm by no means enlightened, and I'm not even on my way there, but I'm enjoying life and I learn more about me every single day. And so the 3 shifts. So the first shift I want to talk about, and I don't know if you've got your journals or if you've got a sheet of paper, but you'll get the replay so you can watch this back. So the first shift is who you really are. And I've just touched on that in my story because it really looked to me like I was this depressed, crazy, boring woman that people didn't really want to be around. Even though I had lots of friends, I was convinced that I was a rubbish friend, that they didn't want to spend time with me really. So I was always trying to be more of a friend. I was a big people pleaser. Same at work, I worked really hard. I worked probably 70, 80-hour weeks because I'd got to be the best to just show everyone that I was worthy of my role. I lived my life very much on that hamster wheel. And in my relationships, I was the same. Always doing something, going the extra mile, doing the extra thing, just being very extra. And I didn't realise that I was already enough. I didn't realise that all of the extra was getting in the way of who I really am. It was creating real insecurity. And I was living from a very insecure place. And I've got a bit of an interesting fact for you here. Did you know that the chances of you being born as you, so I'm not just talking about the chances of you being, of someone being born, but of you being born as you, are 164 trillion to the power of 1 times 10. Just take that in. Take that in and then tell me that you're not meant to be here. That there's not a reason, a purpose, a meaning to you. And just to put some context on that number, to let you know really how minute it is, you imagine you imagine 2 million people, and each of those 2 million people have got a dice or an object that has 1 trillion sides. All of those 2 million people would have to throw that dice 10 times and have it land on the same number. All of those 2 million people. They are how minute the odds are for you to be born as you. And yet we spend so much of our lives trying to change us, like trying to be more. Like, you couldn't be any more. There's nothing that you can do to make you better, to improve you, like, you're already a perfect example of a human, which is how and why you're here. Your ancestors have survived for 150,000 years. That's 150,000 years of direct ancestry. And the result is you. Now that is pretty minute odds. All of those ancestors, in modern times, we don't appreciate how hard it must have been to survive in 150,000 years ago. But they survived to childbearing age to have you. And yet we think we're meaningless. So I hope that's really starting to give you some context into what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life is you. You are the meaning of life. There's nothing you have to do. And the only thing that gets in the way of us seeing that and us experiencing that space where we really know that is thought. So I'm going to talk now about 3 principles: thought, mind, and consciousness. But I'm not going to talk a lot about them. I'm just going to sort of point you in this direction. So thought is a natural phenomena. And someone asked me last week, where does thought come from? And I sat and thought about it for a moment, because I don't really know. What I do know is that none of us were born having to be taught how to think. We were born with that capacity to think, and that kept growing and developing. The older we got, the more mature we got, the more connected to others we got. This capacity to think expands. And so it's not something we do. It's something that's part of us already, this thinking phenomena. And no one was born being told what to think. Like, you were just born and you thought. And as we grow older, we condition ourselves and condition others to think a certain way, to think certain things. And that'll be dependent on a lot of variables, but the conditioning is how we function. We believe that we have to think in a certain way, or have certain thoughts. But actually the capacity to think is innate. And that means that we have to do nothing to think. We're just going to do it naturally. And I don't know about any of you, but one thing that I always ask people is, like, have you ever had, I've just told you some of mine, but have you ever had like a thought that was like, you just wouldn't want to tell anyone that you've had it? Like, you just think, oh my God, I've certainly had them. Now, who did that? Where did that come from? Because I know that I'm a pretty good person. I'm not a bad person, and yet I still have these thoughts that are weird and odd. Now, because I know what's going on, I'm now okay with that. they're funny now. Whereas they used to be pretty frightening. I used to think, wow, what's up with me? And oh, why are you thinking that? And I would give myself a reason why I'd associate it with something. But actually, these thoughts arise within us, and we don't have to pay attention to them when we realise that that's what's happening. Just like your heartbeat occurs and arises, and you don't have to turn it on in the morning, it's a natural phenomenon. Just like the breath you take is a natural phenomenon. Just like, your digestive system is working, it's a natural phenomenon. But there are indicators when our thoughts are going awry, and the indicators are our feelings. So being a coach, I work with a lot of people who have feelings that they don't want. And I'll tell you about a guy I was working with a few months ago. He came to me because he was really struggling. He was very angry. He wasn't violent with his partner, but he was violent with probably most other people. He'd been to prison several times, but when you speak to him, you just get the impression he's a really nice guy. And he came to me on the recommendation while his partner gave him an ultimatum: you need to come to her. So yeah, we sat down one day and he said, I've got this anger. And I said, well, before you go on, I said, I'm going to tell you something about that. I'm not here to change your anger. In fact, even if it was possible, I wouldn't do that, because your anger is useful. And he looks at me and he's like, no, you don't understand, this is ruining my life. And I said, well, that's because you don't understand what your anger's telling you. And so we got my notepad out, and I started to drawing this picture, because lots of us, me included, have very strong feelings, and he was having very strong feelings. Lots of us have these very strong feelings, and we'll react to them, and we'll try and change our outside world to change its feelings in order to make us happy, because we want a nice feeling, don't we? We don't want to feel angry or frustrated or jealous or these big, horrible, guilty, shameful. We don't want those. We want a nicer feeling. But the key to having a nicer feeling is to have the horrible ones when they come along too, and to understand that the horrible feelings are your call back home. They're your personal alarm, reminding you who you really are, that you're peace and love, that's what you're really made of, that you're made of that same universal energy that makes your heart beat. I love that. And that you're made of that same universal energy that makes the trees grow, and just that creates the universe. And that same universal energy, some call it God, some call it the God particle. That same universal energy is creating everything. It's working everything, and it's working with us, for us, and within us. But what happens is we try to work against it. We try to change it as if we can. We can't change what we are. We can be what we are and listen to what it's telling us. And so back to my angry man. We're sitting there and he's getting really confused. And so I asked him if he knows how a speedometer works. And he's an engineer, so I really knew that he would. So he said, yeah, and it tells you how fast your car's going. I said, oh no, it doesn't. I know that seems obvious to say that, because I used to think a speedometer was telling me how fast the car's going. So what else could it be telling you? I mean, is it telling you whether you're going in the right direction? He said, no, it's definitely telling you how fast the car's going. I said, well, if you put your car on rollers, I don't know if any of you have had your car speed tested. I had mine done about 5 years ago. Wow, I used to race cars. So it was on this roller, and the mechanic sat in the car, pressed the accelerator to test the speed of the engine. The car went nowhere. The engine got really, really fast. the speedometer started going up. The speedometer was telling me how fast the engine's going. It wasn't telling me how fast the car's going. So as I was explaining this to this gentleman, he suddenly burst out laughing as he realised what was going on. He said, "So are you saying, Nikki, that that's what's happening in my mind when I'm getting angry?" I said, "That's exactly what I'm saying." You know, our feelings are an indicator of how fast our mind is going. And when our mind is going that fast, we don't see things clearly. We don't see things as they really are. We see things in a very insecure way. And he went away really happy, you know, and a few days later he came back to me. And he when I saw him walk in the room, I was really astounded. I was really astounded. So what I haven't told you is this guy had a limp. He'd had this limp since he'd been able to walk. He'd never been without a limp. And he walked into that session minus a limp. Like, he was walking normally, and it was such a fantastic thing that I was just gobsmacked. I mean, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of miracles. I've seen a lot of transformation, but I had never seen that. And in 3 days, he'd lost his limp. And he sits down. He says, you can see it, can't you? I said, yeah. I said, tell me what's happened. He said, I don't know. He said, I just thought you were talking crap. He said, and I went home. He said, and my wife said, how have you gone with Nikki? And I just rolled my eyes and said, oh, I don't know. He said, but I felt really tired. So he said, I hadn't felt that tired, Nikki, for ages, and I just went to bed. He said, and I woke up in the morning feeling okay, just not brilliant, but feeling okay, just feeling, yeah, today's okay. He says, and I walked across the kitchen, and my wife said, why aren't you limping? He said, and I just don't know what's happened. Well, I knew exactly what happened. You know, he dropped layers and layers of contaminated, insecure thinking. He'd really seen who he really is. He'd dropped all of that worry and angst and frustration and guilt and shame that he had around his anger, all of that fear that he had around his anger. Once he realised that his anger was there to help him, it wasn't there to tell him what to do. It was there to remind him that he's forgetting that he's okay. So I don't know, ladies, because I can't speak to you sort of directly here, but I have a question. This is one of the reflective questions I want you to take away tonight. I don't want you to necessarily answer it right now. It's an open question. It's an invite. It's an invite to go inside, to go deeper. Who are you? Who are you if you didn't have contaminated, insecure thinking? Who would you be then? And over the next week, over the next few days, over the next few hours, just allow that answer to emerge. Because remember what I said, this isn't something you have to do. You aren't the thinker. You are the thinker and the thought and the one who gets to experience it. You are all of that, and there's nothing for you to do. But your answers will come from a clear mind when you're not trying to get there. So that is your first question about the first shift. Who are you really without all of the insecure, contaminated thinking? So I've got a few comments here. I'm just going to take a quick look. Oh, it's Lucy and Katie. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Lucy. I'm glad you joined us. You can take a sip of tea as well. So we're now moving on to the second shift. What is the second shift that's that leads to a miraculous life, that leads to us finding the meaning, us discovering more who we really are. And I've already alluded to this slightly, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. And it's finding your rhythm in life. And my rhythm was definitely out of sync. My rhythm followed the rhythm of my mind, of my intellectual mind. It followed the rhythm of my thoughts. It very much followed that pattern. And so it'd be very chaotic. I had trouble sleeping. I didn't sleep very well. I always looked a little bit swollen, like I was suffering from some sort of inflammation. And I can see now that actually I was on the beginnings probably of some long-term illness. I was under that much stress, self-inflicted, but innocently. I didn't know that this was because I was trying to be more, and I'm already more. I didn't know that. But I was probably on the beginnings of that. And I'm going to tell you something. I was going to tell you another story, and I haven't told this publicly because it's actually quite a new thing for me. So you're the first to know. But I've always suffered from endometriosis. And I don't know if you know what endometriosis is. Some of you, might know, some of you might not. But for those who don't, it's a thickening of the lining of the womb. And I had it on my bowel and my bladder, and I've had 4 operations. I've had surgery 4 times over the last sort of 15 years. It's quite debilitating, very painful periods. My periods would last any time between, like a 10-day period was a good period for me. Sometimes my periods would last for months. I've had periods where I just felt like I would be on a period forever. And the last lot of surgery I had was 8 years ago, and at which point they fitted me with a Mirena coil. Now, the Mirena coil was an attempt to, because they knew that the surgery, it was so extensive because it was on my bowel and my bladder, and it kept growing there. So the Mirena coil was an attempt to not stop my periods, but reduce them significantly. And they didn't. It didn't really. I started to have what they called normal periods between sort of 5 and 7 days, sometimes 10, but still quite heavy, painful. And I hated them. I really hated them. And then there's a second strand to this story. I'm not going off on a tangent here, but I can really see the link. I also, all of my life, I'd had this thing about females, about women, about not that I wanted to change gender, but that I didn't fit in very well with women, and I swayed towards men. And after that initial transformative evening in London, where I realised that I'd been making stuff up innocently, I kind of started to really want to hang around women. And that was really new to me. It was almost like I'd found this new species. I suddenly realised that I'm a woman. That I know that may sound odd, but I found this feminine part of me that I didn't know I had. And I'm not talking about the physical here. I'm talking about a deep feminine instinct that I didn't know I'd had. And that could really relate suddenly to other women. And this really increased. And so around about, as I've gone on this process and I've been doing this work, and my transformation has been inner work, It hasn't been outer work. The outer work's taken care of itself. The outer work's followed the work. And even that's the wrong word, isn't it? Work sounds like it's been like hard work. It hasn't. It's just been, I've just turned the light inside. I've known that I've got to discover me. I've really got to discover me. And then about a few months ago, it suddenly occurred to me to have my coil removed. And I went to my GP and he said, "You're crazy. Like, with your history, there's no way you should be having your coil removed." And I said, "But I just feel like I want it removed." And at this time, I'd been kind of, I was going to say following the moon, but yeah, I was following the moon. I started to get really curious about following cycles. If any of you know anything about ecology, and some of you probably know a lot more about it than I do, we are part of this beautiful, huge ecological system that's connected. And it's connected to everything. Each one thing is connected to the other. There's no separateness. And scientists are really, really taking this more seriously all of the time. And they're discovering that, just like birds need the flowers and the flowers need the birds, we all need these things. We're all connected. And that the universe works on a system of cooperation, which is very different than the theory of evolution of Darwin, where he said that actually the reason species survive is survival of the fittest. They're now discovering actually the reason species survive is because they learn how to cooperate and they support each other and they move with the cycles of the universe. And you can see this in nature. We have seasons, we have lunar cycles and solar cycles. And the reason actually we're here on this night is because it's a waning moon. And a waning moon is a time where energies are shifting, but they're actually shifting back. They're releasing, they're withdrawing. And I wanted to, whilst the universal energy is working that way, I thought it'd be a great night for us to shift back and release, and for us to let go of all of that stuff that's been weighing us down. So that's why we're here tonight, actually. So that's the second shift. I'm not giving you instructions to follow the lunar cycles, but I am inviting you to look at what cycles you might be ignoring. Which brings me back to my endometriosis. I had my coil removed and my periods have reduced to between 3 and 5 days. In fact, I can't believe I can have periods so normal. I didn't know periods could be like this. Like, my flow is, I've just got no words to describe it really, because I have no experience of having periods so normal. And so I returned to the GP, who was also pretty gobsmacked, but assures me that the endometriosis is probably, all but having a scan, which I don't need. I'm not going to have a scan. I don't need one. Everything's normal. That everything appears normal. And that was pretty mind-blowing to me. And I just know that there's a connection to connection. There's a connection to the way I've become rooted in nature and in life. And so I'm inviting you to discover what cycles, what rhythms are available for you. I saw a quote the other day on Facebook and I loved it. And it was, I think, because I get the words wrong, I'm much better at writing than talking. So the quote was, "I don't meditate to find silence. I meditate to enjoy silence." I want to say that again, because I just found silence. So I don't meditate to find silence. I meditate to enjoy silence. And in a world of noise, it can feel that silence is missing, but silence is what you're made of. Silence is that universal energy, that love, that peace, that deep knowing. Silence is consciousness. One thing I always ask people when I'm doing talks, I love asking this, is, when we're talking about non-duality and that we're all one, it can be a little bit of a head blag for people. And I get that, because it is for me sometimes too. But one thing that brings me back is asking people to show me where they end and where I begin. And no one's been able to do that yet. Maybe one of you can show me, but I doubt it. Because we're always connected. And not only we are connected to each other, and our experiences are seamless and connected, we're connected to everything else too. We are part of this beautiful, glorious system called the universe. And that's why people, when I ask people when do they get the best ideas, a lot of the time they'll say in nature, and or when I'm by water, or something like that. And it's because that energy, that connection to life is palpable. It's something we're drawn to. But when I was at my most chaotic, it was something that it never occurred to me to go for a walk in nature. So this isn't me prescribing a walk in nature, but notice what you're really yearning for underneath all of the noise. You're yearning to get back to that connection. And so make the most of it. Realign yourself with whatever you find in there. You will start noticing these cycles, these rhythms are all around you. You can feel them, you can be part of them. And part of my shift, for the endometriosis has really been that as I've been on this journey of healing, and I didn't know that I was healing. I'd never even considered that endometriosis could be healed. So it wasn't something I was focusing on. Never once in this 4 or 5 years have I thought, I'm now going to sort my endometriosis out. It's just been, as I've got more into the rhythm of life, as my mind is less likely to respond to the noise it makes, then I've found the natural rhythm that I'm part of, and my body is responding and healing. So that's your second shift. So I invite you ladies to notice that. Just make a note over the next few days of what rhythms, what cycles are there for you, what are there to serve you, what can you enjoy, and make the most of them. So I am aware that we have 15 minutes left, and I want to talk about the third shift. Now, I love this shift. Seeing this really was huge for me, because as a recovering compromiser and an ex-people pleaser, this was massive. This was a massive change. And it's the difference between living a life from the place of compromise and living a life from the place of sacrifice. And I don't think I'd ever considered sacrifice as something I wanted to do. A few very special people I would sacrifice for, but most people I would compromise for. I'm now swaying towards sacrifice. I learned that the true meaning of sacrifice is to give a sacred gift. Now, it always looked like sacrifice was, I don't know, but it didn't have a nice feel to it. We use sacrifice in a not very nice way. But the word sacrifice is to give a sacred gift. And before the use of a monetary system, when we were hunter-gatherers and people didn't have a means, even before bartering, and that kind of thing, I lived in very small villages and communities, and you would pay your neighbour with something that you couldn't afford to give away. I think that's absolutely beautiful. I think, it's a real deep, appreciative gesture. And it isn't to get something. We don't sacrifice to get something. But I'd lived, the reason I compromised was I gave half to get half, or I gave half to keep half. one or the other. It was always one or the other. But if we're only ever giving half, we can only ever receive half. And I'd not seen that. And I'm traditionally I've been really bad at receiving. I don't know how many of you might be good at receiving, but most people I come across who are living a life of compromise aren't really good at receiving because they've never really received fully. They've never known the beauty of being gifted and gifting. And so I'm inviting you to explore this concept. And what it led me to personally, and what it leads my clients to, is to really make conscious choices over what they're doing, what activities they're doing, who they're invited into their life, who they're spending time with. And this isn't something you're going to be able to do tomorrow. You're not going to go out tomorrow and suddenly realise that you want to sacrifice something, and but the sacrifices started as small little things. So one thing that I sacrificed was the guilt that I felt at doing something for me. I realised how that just was not serving me, and that in order to serve others, I had to find that place where I could be in deep contentment. I had to start limiting my time. I had to start resting. I had to start nourishing and fulfilling. I had to do all of that because without all of that, I couldn't give to my fullest potential. And so people weren't really being served. They weren't receiving from me because I hadn't got anything to. I'd only got half. And so also as part of that sacrifice was there was less people were going to get that too, because I had less time to be people pleasing. I started to say no, and I started to say yes in a different way than I'd ever done before. And that means that I give because I want to give. I don't give to get. And this isn't law of attraction, what I'm going to say now. I'm not talking about manifesting, but somehow, I don't know how, because I don't know, how this works. I just know that we're part of the system, this universal energy. But somehow I discover that I am abundance, and that abundance is what we're made of, what we're all made of. So I really want you to write this question down. And avoid answering it, because things might jump into your mind. You might make assumptions. But very often we don't need answers to these questions. The transformation occurs without us answering it, without us doing anything about it. You just notice one day that, wow, I let go of that guilt. Wow, I let go of that shame. As you're saying no to more and saying yes to more, and the shape of your life and the shape of your inner world is changing, you'll just notice that transformation has already happened. That's called insight. Insight is our gift. So consider what sacrifice really means. What is not sacrificing? What is compromising doing for you? What does it feel like to only give halfway? Maybe you can give fully. And maybe that means not giving it all in some areas. But maybe that's going to take something off your mind when you have less decisions to make, less people to please. And you're starting to please you. You're starting to connect with your true nature. You actually become more loving, more compassionate, more open, more honest. You don't become less. You have more to give than less. Very counterintuitive, I know, but it's true. So there are the 3 shifts, ladies. It's discovering who you really are, getting in touch with the rhythms and cycles from which you're made, from where you come, and discovering the difference between compromise and sacrifice, and start to live from that place. And I know that as you start to make these shifts, you're going to find more peace, more contentment, more joy, more love. My relationships changed. You know, I thought I was in a pretty good relationship anyway, but it's I'm not. Now, I am not giving you the impression that me and my partner Stephen don't argue or don't, you know, whatever, but it's just from a deeper, everything's just from a deeper place. And we have more joyful times together, more giving times together, more loving times together, and a deep appreciation for each other, because I know what sacrifices he makes and I receive them, like fully, openly, very appreciatively, and vice versa. He does too. So I don't know if we've got any questions. I'd love to hear them. So Lucy, I love this story. Yeah, I love my story too. We've all got there. I'm sure that you can all sort of relate to this. Whilst I'm waiting to see if there's any questions to come through, I just want to let you all know about the gift that I want to give to you. The reason that I'm doing this class tonight is because this work is so important for women. Women, you know, are becoming more depleted. I'm meant to, but I'm doing work with men separately, but women are becoming more depleted. We're spreading ourselves more thinly. We're trying to be more because we don't realise that we're all already magnificent. We don't realise that we're already enough. And we don't realise that we can actually focus in. We can go deeper in certain areas of our life and get more enjoyment, get more creative. And so I really wanted to share this with you on this live class, and as a token of my appreciation for you giving me your time, I want to offer you the chance of coming along to a miracle hour where we'll do this work one-to-one, where you can sort of ask any questions, or you can choose an area of your life and say, you know, what about this, Nikki? Or I've got this going on, Nikki. And we'll spend that hour going deep, going within you. You know, you are the purpose, you are the meaning. And I can't do this work for you, but I can point you to where it's going on, to where your flow is, to the fact that you are the flow. So I'll be in touch with you all over the next few days. And I'll send you my calendar, and if you'd like to book in with me, you can do that. So thank you. I'm going to take a look at the chat box now. Nikki, you said our feelings are an indicator of how fast our minds are going. Can you give us an example? Yeah, I can. Many, many examples. So I'll tell you a good example. Around about 40 minutes, Mona, before this live class, I suddenly got really nervous. I suddenly thought, oh, I've been creating this and I've been wanting to do this work for ages. But I suddenly got really nervous. Now, I speak in front of hundreds of people every week. No problem. You know, why was I suddenly getting nervous about work that I know deeply, that I just know? And it's because my mind got busy. And my mind gets busy when I'm trying to have a nicer feeling. So you know, our feelings ebb and flow. 1 minute we can feel this, and the next minute we feel that. When we're not really that in love with the feeling we have, you know, so I wanted a nicer feeling, and I try and change that feeling. Well, that takes more thought. Thought upon thought upon thought upon thought. An example would be, you know, if you're trying to think positively, we see them memes all the time, don't we? Think positively, change your thoughts to positive thoughts. But the problem with that is it takes more thought, and thought is the heaviest thing you can carry around with you. You're not the one who gets to control thought. You're the one who thought passes through when we allow it to. And so if you allow your thoughts to settle without doing anything about them, They will change. And your feelings are an indicator that we're not allowing our thoughts to settle. They're there to remind us of that. They're there to say the shape of your thinking is anxious, Nikki. Now, my feelings don't know whether this webinar was going to go well or not. I haven't got a clue. But they were certainly looked to me like they did for a few minutes. I was feeling like, ooh, am I going to do a good job? Or, how are people going to sort of receive this? And well, that's like me trying to predict the future. I can't do that. So just to drive this point home, Mona, I don't want to go on too long about it, but you could all perhaps join in this little exercise. If you pop your hand out in front of you and have a look at your hand. Now that hand is there, I'm sure, but you only know that hand's there because you're experiencing thought. You're not experiencing the hand. Now if you wiggle your fingers for me. Now wiggle your fingers next week. Next week, we don't even know that we'll have fingers next week. I hope we have. But we don't know, And yet every time I'm getting anxious, that's me trying to wiggle my fingers next week. That was me saying, oh, you know how this webinar's going to go. You won't do a very good job. Well, that's nonsense. I didn't know at all. Because the only moment I've got is this one where I can see my hand right now. And so every time my mind loops forward and making assumptions about how something is going to go, that's us trying to control the feeling. I hope it goes well so that I feel well. Well, the final thing I want to leave you on, and this is really, really massive. No one ever died from a feeling. We spend our lives trying to change our feelings, trying to feel better, trying to feel nice, trying to feel love. As if feeling horrible can harm us. No one ever died from a feeling. People die from trying to do something about a feeling. People kill other people trying to do something about a feeling. And as we really start to see that, it makes no sense to do something about a feeling. The feeling is telling us that. The feeling is a reminder to let it go, let that feeling flow through us. It's our personal alarm, our call back home. So I'm just going to check, Mona. I'm not sure. Hopefully that's helped. And what I will say is kind of, if the next few days, listen for a feeling. Now, not in, don't examine your feelings, but just really get a thought. Thanks, Charlotte. I'm really glad you could join us. Really get a flavour of just how many feelings you have in a day. If you're like me, you probably have hundreds. And some are nice, some are not. And we don't need to be afraid of them. Who we are underneath a feeling is the loving feeling, the compassionate, the understanding, the joyous feeling. We're that. We're peace of mind. We're peace of mind and a meat skin. That's really it. And we forget. We think we've got to control the world. Oh, Zoe, I'm really, really glad that you enjoyed it. Thank you. We really think we've got to control the world and we haven't. So just reflect on this and get back to me with any questions, ladies. I'm here. I'm just going to take one more question as well from, I think it's, Lucy, what cycles might you click into? Can you tell me how you work with them? Yeah, so as part of I'm doing a programme coming up soon, a Year of Miracles, and we're going to be I'm going to be taking a group of women and we're going to be part of that will be diving into cycles. So it'll be looking at the lunar cycles, the solar cycles, also our inner cycles, of which our feelings are actually part of. Winter, who feels like sort of, I looked out of the house, weather's gorgeous in Stoke at the moment, I think pretty much all over the country. And you can get this sense of, we're coming to the end of winter, we're moving into spring. And I can see people around me sort of, I just get in this real energy buzz where people are moving into, you can see them saying, I want it. Like, it's almost like they're saying, I can't wait till spring so that I can feel better. Anyone relate to that? That used to be me all the time. I hated winter. I used to hate January. And I've had the best January ever this year. And so one of the things that people forget is that seasons are there to help us reset. They help nature reset. Well, we are nature. And when we ignore that, we don't reset. Now, there's so much I could say. I'm sorry I haven't left a lot of time for this, Lucy, but there's so much I could say about anxiety and depression, and actually sort of, illness in terms of this, but how is ignoring these cycles, we're not giving our system a chance to naturally reset. Just like we don't give our mind a chance to reset when we try and change a feeling, we're not giving our physical self a chance to reset and settle, that it does all on its own. When I told you my story of endometriosis, that's what's happened. I've not given endometriosis any consideration whatsoever. It's reset as I've started to reset. So that's the kind of flavour of the cycles that I'm talking about, Lucy. And these are all around us. These are really, they're so, we take them for granted and we don't notice them, but they're there. And so, notice how we're coming into spring and what that means for you. Notice when you go outside, you'll smell a change in the air. Even I live in an inner city and can still do that. I can still smell a change in the air and sense that change in the air. And it's kind of, we're getting ready to wake up. But in order to get ready to wake up, we need nourishing, we need rest, we need to go with that flow rather than sort of like just waking up and going. That's a summer cycle. So yeah, that's kind of a flavour of cycles and what I'm referring to. But rather than putting it in people's heads, I want them to just start noticing what they notice, because this is something you start noticing naturally as your mind settles. And your mind will settle as you go along in life and you really discover who you really are, which is why I started with that. Really, you'll start to get a feel and you'll start to be more you in the world, be more unique, be more who you really are. So I think I've got, oh, thanks, Steph. I'm so glad you joined us. It's great, you're amazing. I'm so amazed. Oh, thank you, Lucy. Oh, that's lovely. Hi, Birdie. I didn't know you were with us. I'm Emma, thank you. So, ladies, I'm going to be in touch with you over the next few days. And next time, maybe we'll get on a proper Zoom where we can all join in and we can sort of get to know each other. But I'm really grateful and appreciative of you giving me your time tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll speak to you all soon. Oh, Jenny, you just wrote, sorry, Jenny. Jenny, have you got a question? Let me just, you're going to show my lack of techie skills up here, Jenny, now. I've just seen your hands raised. So, you loved everything exactly what you're connected to. It is, isn't it? And I know that you're really into Tantra and, and that's all part of it. It's all it's all part of the cycle and the rhythm that I was talking about. So yeah, totally. I just want to check, because I saw Jenny raise a hand, but I'm such a Jenny, if I unmute you, you can let me, are you okay then to let me know whether you've got a question or not? I'm not sure if that's worked. So I think Jenny might have gone. I'm not sure. Anyway, ladies, yeah, I think people are leaving now because it is the end anyway. So I just want to say thank you again. Oh, Jenny's here. That's great. Hi, Jenny. I'm just going to make sure you're. Oh, apparently, I think Jenny, you have to unmute yourself. If you're able to do that, there should be a little button. Lucy's messaging me. She tends to know these things more than I do. There's a little button in the bottom left-hand corner. If you can unmute yourself there. I'm having a look too, but I can't see. No, it will have to be you that unmutes you. You can see what a technophobe I am, can't you? You can also type it into the chat box, Jenny, if you're able to. Lucy has kindly given me instructions on how to use the webinar here. Lucy, you're a lifesaver, thank you. Okay, I can't seem to. Oh, just going to say thank you. Oh, Jenny, thank you. No, thank you actually for giving me your time and your energy and your space. I know that, you know, it can take a lot to fit these things into our schedule, but I'm so glad you joined us, and I'm glad you've really enjoyed it. Thank you. Thanks for letting me know. So ladies, we'll end it there. You will all get the recording, and I will be in touch with you all shortly, this week actually, just to give you that opportunity to come and do some deep inner work for an hour with me and really get this journey flowing. And yeah, thank you. I'll speak to you all soon.